Great.
Start with the minutes. Okay.
Crap, I'm on the top of the list.
Yeah, you generally are.
Uncle.
I don't suppose there are any hardware updates just for Grape 1.
Oh, no.
Okay, then you are no longer on the top of the list. Updates from the New England group. Actually, let me check if any of them are on the call.
Yeah, we're all here.
Oh, I was gonna say there's a suspicious amount of silence. I know at the moment.
Well, it says W1XP, so that's Bob. But
Yeah, that's
any of us could answer. Maybe Stan would be appropriate, or Bob.
I think you should go over what we need to cover today, Bill.
Okay, we've started assembling the systems, testing them and assembling and putting them in boxes. Discovered a few things along the way. Number one, that the disks that we formatted earlier did not work with the pies that they were formatted for.
No.
So we're going to be reformatting those. That's not a big problem because we have a script to do that. But we've been reformatting those with using the pi that they are to be connected to. So that's not a real issue. But the second issue was that we started getting a USB error. And I mentioned this to Bill Engelke, and he's seen it before, having to do with, we think, the power, the spin up of the disk drive, perhaps using overloading the power supply and not being able to access the USB drive. We can get around that by pulling all the devices out of the USB slots and rebooting, and then plugging them in later, and then subsequent boots work fine. So we're not sure what that issue is yet, but we've gotten it to the point where the systems boot several times in order without getting that error again. The third thing was that we noticed on one system when the screen would blank at inactivity timeout, which was set to 15 minutes, the system wouldn't come back. The disk light was blinking, and no amount of activity on the mouse or keyboard would bring the monitor back. So the only choice was to hard reset it, power down and power back up. That only happened on one system. We think it might be related to low batteries on the wireless mouse and keyboard. We tried resetting the dongle in the USB slot. That didn't help. So that's just kind of a concern. And we worked out with Bill Engelke that we should probably advise users through the Eclipse to disable screen blanking inactivity, at least through the Eclipse, so that we will ship the systems without any screen blanking. The monitor will stay on. If the user wants to turn off the monitor, they can just cut the power to it, using the monitor switch. But otherwise, leave it active. And the second thing was to disable any software updates. at least through the eclipse, because we don't want the system to automatically reboot in the middle of the eclipse.
Yeah, there is just one thing. You have to allow security
Yeah.
updates to occur. So you can
Yeah.
set it so that only security updates are applied. So I think that's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan, and turns out we can't get around that. That's a hard requirement. Ubuntu doesn't allow you to avoid those security updates. So we just hope they won't occur during the time of the eclipse.
Well, what I have noticed is when it does a security when it does an update, it asks you whether you want to reboot or not, and you can just choose to ignore that, and it will sit there and wait indefinitely. So
Even for a security update?
yes, at
Okay,
least that's been my experience. So we just need to advise users that if you get a request for a security update in the middle of the eclipse, just ignore it. It won't go away. You can come back and reboot the next day.
okay, good.
That's what I've seen here too.
Okay. So, George, are you on?
I am.
Could you make a note of that for the doc?
About disabling updates.
About telling users to ignore any update dialogue that pops up.
Yeah,
Yeah, during the eclipse,
during the
if it
eclipse.
asks for, yeah, during the eclipse, if it asks for a reboot, just ignore that and come back and get it within the next few days.
say that again, please, slowly. You've got an echo.
Oh, if you have a request for a reboot while we're doing, or during the eclipse, just ignore that. It will wait and come back a few days later and then authorize the reboot.
Got it.
Actually, doesn't the system automatically restart at midnight UTC?
Well, we're talking about two different things, Joe. We're talking about what you're talking about is a reboot of the application or restart of the application in order to start the next day's observation. What Bill and George are talking about is a reboot, an actual reboot.
At the Ubuntu level.
Yeah.
Operating system reboot.
Okay, thank you.
Other than that, the systems are uploading once they're configured, and we're seeing them in the PSWS network observations. Bill is seeing them, and everything looks good.
Conditions are nominal.
I think we've decided to not include the startup guide with the shipped systems, but to have it up on the website that Nathaniel will make it's called Grape 1-DRF-Docs under HAMSI.
Well, my suggestion is put it up there, but I suggest sending it to Gary and he can have an email list and send it to all the sites that are going to
Yep.
receive a system.
Good idea.
And that way it's a single point. He can just basically forward it, because we might want another day or something depending on going through these 6. But I would
Yep.
like to send out these 6, ship these 6 today, whether or not we have a document.
Understood.
Yeah, and when you email them, you can also include a link to the online doc. So in case there's any late breaking changes to the online doc, people can
Yeah,
get that. So
yeah. So we want, date of version number on there, but you have one anyway.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I can take care of that.
All right, I will send when we finalize, quote, finalize. I will send you, Gary, a golden sample, and I will send one to Nathaniel to put on a website, a web page. And it has changed. I sent it out to a group of people, maybe 9 people, a couple of times now. And it has changed somewhat in the details, but not in the overall treatment. We're up to Rev 1.7, I believe, right now.
Yeah, I can, Nathaniel, depending on what your schedule's like, I can start working on the webpage tomorrow morning, or if you want to take care of it, that's fine, and I'll maintain it going forward, whatever you want to do.
If you can start taking over that website, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd have a lot of spare time. So yeah, okay, I'll start working on that in the morning, Friday morning.
Thank you.
Could you put a link somewhere in the front that links to the Grape 1-DRF-docs page?
Yeah, I will, I'll do that, George, and as soon as I've got something set up, I'll send it to you to look at and
All right,
be welcome
just so
to
it's
revise it.
not hidden and people can navigate to it when they come out of the forest and just stumble on the website site, and they can go right to this thing.
Will do.
Thank you.
There was one more issue to deal with. We have,
Yeah.
I have 4 SD cards for people we don't have systems for. They're gonna need some maybe different information if they're setting up a totally, different drive. They're programming everything, not everything, but formatting their drive, and I'm just worried about how this image, how they're gonna deal with that, I guess. They're not like under control like we are with, with the 15.
We summarize what we're doing to the 15 and
So I think maybe some, I don't know, I have to send some other information. I need to forward those cards, but we're gonna have to send them some additional information. But I guess we can work through that, but we don't have their hardware, so we can't tell.
we can't tell them exactly what to do.
What
but
disk they're gonna run with, yeah.
Well, the people who are doing that are, from what I gather, are people who have a lot of expertise.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
just so you know, part of the image, if you go into the documents, is a PDF that has like 25 pages of detailed documentation about all the aspects that I could think of to write about. And so somebody with a lot of expertise who reads that doc should be able to get their system working.
This
And
is
it's only a few people. I mean, if they can contact me if they really get stuck.
Bill, this is your combined document of 2 papers you wrote a while ago?
Yes, it's in the image.
It's what?
It's in the image. It's actually on every chip that I burned.
Right. Now I have formatted that and put a table of contents in it. It's 27 or 32 pages. Do you want to publish your version or my version? I don't.
Well, put your version out there. I'm just saying that when I burned the chips, I just put that document on. It's in the documents, the directory on the burned chip.
I was thinking it should go in that documents directory documents page that we're talking about.
What kind of things are you thinking of being different that might cause a problem? Different hard drives, that kind of thing, or what?
Yeah, the hard drive. If the way the image boots now, it assumes that you have a hard drive with a label G1DRF on it, and if you don't have that, then the system will not boot. It comes up in emergency mode, and we'll put out instructions in the startup document about how to get through that if it occurs to one of the regular users. But the users with just the four users with the SD cards only are going to hit that first thing, and they need to know the commands to boot it out of emergency mode. Although that's one thing.
Well, let me ask a question, because I want to go through this process myself in the next week or so. Bill Engelke's documentation, does that include the steps to label the format and label the drive G1 DRF?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we might
But
use that.
Well,
But it doesn't really have to be labeled. I mean, if you just disable the the FS tab entry that mounts the G1DRF file system and let it auto mount, which the operating system will do if you have an external drive attached when you boot up. It'll mount it under /media/Ubuntu. And then you would have to change the path to that, to the storage, the Spectrum storage path in the uploader config file to that path. And so those instructions could be included in for the users, for the 4 users that are getting the SD card only.
Well, would it
That's
help,
my-
or would it be beneficial if we had instructions for labeling the drive so the systems are more consistent? I don't know, this is all new stuff to me too. I'm not a Linux Ubuntu user by any means. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, a brand new drive has to be partitioned and formatted.
Sure.
And I think, Bill, you can answer this better than I, but doesn't really matter if it's ext4 or exFAT file system type or what, but.
Well, I don't know if it matters. In my case, I was only able to get it to work. It was formatted ext4.
Okay.
ext4 has a much better recovery from a system crash than VFAT, which is why
Yes.
we're using it.
Yeah.
And it does also allow all the Ubuntu and Linux utilities,
Right.
FSCK to.
I mean, it's a
run.
journalized file system, so it's very robust.
Right. So it is preferred.
Yes. So we're
Which
using
one
on
is preferred,
Grape
I'm
2.
sorry? ext4?
ext4. And I wrote a script to partition and format it, but it, you know, it has, you got to know what you're doing to run the script, basically. So,
I formatted my disk on a Linux Mint system, and it seems to be working just fine.
okay.
At least I hope it is. And that's a question for Bill. I downloaded the last image I know that he posted, and I've been running that. Do not appear to be having any problems. Will that be adequate for the Eclipse?
Yes, the changes are quite minute.
Thank you, Bill. And thanks for your enormous amount of effort on all this.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So one other thing, Gary. I need addresses for, well, I can send you an email with the names of the ones I have for just SD cards, because I don't have an address for them.
Okay, that's fine. I'll contact those people, verify their addresses, and get back to you, Stan.
Okay,
Yeah, because I don't want to assume anything. This is time's too critical, so.
We might also bear in mind that there are still several people who I didn't burn a chip for because they never created an instrument within on the network. That would be Ward Silver, N0AX, Steve Miller, KD6SPB, Chris Prosser, KI7DLN, and Gary Lyons and Dave Swartz. They have been out of pocket. We had talked with them about the possibility they may run a system, but they haven't created their objects on personal space for the network yet. If they do, we can have chips ready for them within a day or two, but so far not.
well, one
Okay.
or two of them have systems here. I know Ward Silver does, and offhand, I can't think of the other one, but at least Ward Silver has a system coming, which we can't ship without him getting on the ball, I guess.
If somebody needs to contact these people, Ward Silver, Steve, I mean, I think I sent Gary my latest, well, I took his spreadsheet and added a couple columns showing the status of the instrument and an SD card. And somebody needs to follow up with these, I don't know, 4 or 5 people and give them one last chance to get ready so that they can have a system with cards shipped.
I'll send Ward an email right now.
He
Yeah,
just
and
needs to go in and create an instrument on his station.
yeah, and Ward was aware of that a couple weeks ago before I left, and I know his wife had some surgery and stuff, so that may be why it slipped his mind. But I think jiggling him with a reminder right now will help, and I'll work on the other guys today too. I think the thing that'll help us a little bit with a couple of the last minute guys, because they're on the road as well. They may be back by the end of the month, and I think they'll be in a position, hopefully be in a position where they can download the imaging. We won't have to have physical cards transferred around, but we'll see how that goes.
Bill, I just sent you an email. Lee, KF7YRS up in Utah, has had a couple of system crashes involved with plugging and unplugging a USB memory stick. Anyway, that's in the email.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
sounds
know,
like
these Raspberry Pis, this is not something made by Hewlett Packard or something. I mean, you don't have gold-plated connectors and stuff like that. You can confuse the system with if you start doing a lot of manipulating the USB while the system is running. Now, I haven't found that to be a frequent occurrence, but you know,
I have not had that problem here, and I plug and unplug USB memory stick into a powered hub several times, and no trouble here.
yeah, that's been my experience as well.
I have seen where if you plug multiple USB sticks into the same USB hub, you know, like the paired socket, under Linux and under Windows, I've seen it lock it up. The IDs get confused. So I've seen that happen. So it's not unique to Ubuntu.
I've seen some problems on Windows 10. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that that we can really solve that other than to tell people
Don't do it.
If you're monitoring, keep your hands off the system.
yeah.
Right.
Collecting data.
I think everyone's right in that supposition. And once we get these systems out, as I did in the past, whether weekly or semi-weekly or quarterly or whatever, to send some updates out with these kinds of hints, and then we'll also put them on the web page so they at least have a couple of chances to see what you guys are suggesting.
Good. A hits and kinks article on that docs webpage would be great.
Yes.
In your
'Cause
free time.
we're gonna be learning stuff as we go along, so that's something that can be added in there. You know, it can be a daily update for all that matters. So
Absolutely.
Do we have an online forum where people can post questions and comments, and if somebody answers a question, you may be able to do a search and find out your problem. Do we have something like that up and running already?
Gary has mentioned in his last update that the Google Group Samsung Grape page is where our crack experts will be, our consulting team will monitor it, and they will respond to your queries. Is that right, Gary?
yes, absolutely.
And I mentioned that in the it's not quick, it's 15 pages, but in the startup guide.
Okay. Seems like things have settled a little bit. Have the cases arrived in New England?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
they have.
on everything.
Gold. I'm gonna cross that off then.
Okay.
Bill, do you have any more software updates? I know the images are burned at this point, so I don't know if you have more updates, or does the New England group have any updates on current deployment?
No, I think we've already covered all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
There is one note I would like to make in that the power or the cases for the Raspberry Pi 4 that were selected, the IO 40-pin IO pin header connector opening is not big enough for a cable. So we cannot use those same Pis for the Grape 2. But the heavy duty case in that line does have a slot for the cable come out, and that works fine. So just a FYI.
you referring to the heatsink
Heatsink case, yes.
enclosure on the Pi? Yeah.
Yes. The header was too wide to fit into the opening for the 40-pin header connection.
Oh,
For standard cable.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Okay. All right.
Wait a minute. You talk about the GPIO, John?
Yes.
Actually, those cases came with 2 extension.
Right. If it's a straight down header, it works fine. But if you have a standard ribbon cable that has the ears on it that clamps the cable, the ears hit the case and you can't plug it in.
But you can use the header to extend the,
No, because the pins on the header will not plug into the cable.
oh,
There's solder tail.
there's the,
Yeah.
Okay.
there's,
The pins on the ends are solder tail. They're not 25,000 square posts. So, but the heavy duty one, the same price, has a slot and it works fine.
Can those slots be opened up with a Dremel if necessary?
For the
Sure.
price, it's not worth the effort.
No, I'm just saying if somebody already had one, just,
somebody wanted to use this Pi for the Grape 2 world. You could
Yeah,
take it to
we
the-
just give them. We should ship them a new case, have them change it out.
Okay.
Or have them send it back and we'll change it for them.
Okay.
Over to you.
I think that there are very few updates on station selection. This has been fairly static. The map is still beautiful. Okay, documentation. Any updates outside of what we already covered?
It's a moving target and I'm trying to keep up, but and as I said, we're not going to include the startup guide with each shipped system. It's going to be online, just like the big boys do. If you want to know how to use this thing, go to this website.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns on Grape 1 deployment?
yeah, just one quick question. Who's got the details on the disk drive cases? Because I'd like to keep the documentation and the parts list up to date. I'd like to add that in there at some point. No rush. But if somebody could send that to me or whatever would be helpful.
the model number of the disk drive enclosures?
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, I'll send that to you, Gary.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Are we all confident and comfortable about the Grape 1 deployment? Okay. This is good news. Knock on all of the wood. Anything on Grape 2, John?
Where do I start? It was not a good week for me this week. I was in the process of finalizing my magnetometer housing and had unplugged the power to the logic board. And in the process of plugging it in, I missed the connector and it slipped over, and the tip of the power, which was tied to 13.7 volts, hit the pin that was my test point for +5. The power
Cool.
supply was capable of delivering 15 amps. It did. It took out the Raspberry Pi. It took out the U-blocks. It took out the Pico. It took
Ouch.
out the frequency synthesizers, the interface chip for the I2C. Basically, it completely roached and toasted the system to beyond usable. So it's a test point and it's not on the next rev, but lessons learned, don't do that. It actually would have survived if I did not have my scope attached, and the scope had the ground clips on it, and that's where the return path came to. Otherwise, it would have just been nothing happened. But so I'm recovering from that. Bill Blackwell sent me his system, and I'm chasing after a read problem with the A to Ds. I have duplicated it on my system here at home, so that's a good sign. Also, the second thing I ran into that was a showstopper is that the U-blocks GPS unit by itself cannot be a frequency standard for the RF signals. It has some very interesting quirks, and I consulted with John Ackerman and Glenn yesterday for about 2.5 hours on a Zoom meeting. Basically, I have to design a stage that goes between the U-blocks and the SI5351s to make this work, because every 90 milliseconds, it resyncs itself and there's a phase slip. And if you look at it on the spectrum, it's a complete splatter. And you can see it on the decoded waveforms coming out of my low IF stages. You can see the sine wave sort of shift, which means it's throwing all kinds of spectral data all over the place. So, so I'm back to working with John Ackerman basically and Glenn on designing something that works. But I did find out that the Leo Bodnar unit plays some interesting, very special tricks to get his to work. And Glenn has reverse engineered 90% of that. And we're looking at doing that similar thing to make this work. So that, and let's see, what else did I do this week? I'm working on the file specification and header specification and content specification for Kung to get him going for the 5 files he's going to be saving in real time. So other than that, that was my week.
Okay. Ouch.
Yeah. Ouch.
Okay. Is Kung on the call? I should probably check before I ask.
I'm
If
here.
did you want to give a software update?
So now that I'm receiving something from John, that should get me going. I'm waiting on that part. And regarding the antenna, as you put on here, I'm currently not getting into that for now because John's RF4 has the ability to generate a test signal, so I'm relying on that for the moment.
Yeah, what he's referring to is there is the 4th PLL on the 2nd SI5351. I made it into a diagnostic port, and I had Bill program it such that we can simulate all 6 of the frequencies coming from the beacon stations and inject that into the RF front end. And it's actually going to be a diagnostic tool I'm going to use to bring all the boards up. And it works quite well. So it's a self-diagnostic, complete chain gets tested from, the antenna jack all the way to the A to D outputs. So it's kind of cool. And it also allows to test David Kasdan's frequency determining algorithm, because it's right on the money. So it has a lot of benefits and it's going to help a lot. So
Yeah, and regarding that frequency and analysis program, so the code is now I guess prepare so that as soon as that program is completed, I can just copy and paste it into the server directory, and it would immediately be operational.
I would say be ready for testing.
For testing, yeah.
Yeah. But the fact that he can generate audio files with different levels of noise and a specified frequency is huge. Because now we can go back and actually test FL Digi to see what its performance is. So it's got a lot of uses.
Oh, just to clarify, that frequency analysis program is not done, is the integration with that program is done, yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that the program
Right.
is written by is being written by David Castan right now.
Correct. Yeah, the diagnostic portion of that is not done yet, but that should be an easy spin.
Okay. Kazdan, are you on the call?
I'm here.
Did you want to give an update? I know we
Yeah.
met about
We talked about the singular value decomposition, and I'd still like to meet with you about that. I used a different technique to do the peak finding, a parabolic spline, and I'd like to show that to you, make sure that it meets a mathematician's approval. So is there a time, excuse me, is there a time next week that you and I might meet?
I can send you a when is
Okay. Yeah, if you do that, I'd appreciate it.
because that might be the easiest way.
Good.
I can also swing by operating hours / unofficial projects times tonight.
I'll be there only briefly tonight. We're getting ready for holiday. That's why I can't do anything this week, but next week.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the Grape 2 deployment then?
Can't think of anything.
Dead silence is generally good.
Either that or the guy died.
Oh no. We're just suspiciously very far ahead of schedule in terms of the clock. I don't know whether or not to be amazed or suspicious. Other open projects. This is more ongoing. I assume that all of the Hamsai legal stuff is still fairly backlogged.
Well, I think maybe that's a good thing. If I sent a bunch of legal documents to lawyers and they haven't responded, and I had gone over and like talked to him in person, if I haven't heard from him, it's clearly not the most important thing on his mind right now. So
right.
I'm just taking that as like, all right, we're gonna go for it. Other good things that I know some things have gone through the our director of research and associate provost, and he's been very supportive of things. So I think we're in a good spot. So I'm sure the legal stuff will eventually happen or something, but it's clearly not on the universities. They don't seem that concerned at the moment. So
fair. No, I'm just kind of checking in. I didn't know if you wanted to talk briefly about, since we have the time, the digital RF visualization and documentation stuff.
Yeah, that's really great, especially since Gary is back. So Gary, while you were gone, I had some conversations with I think it was George, is that right? About trying to get some visualization tools for the digital RF. What we'd really like, one of the things, I think there are a couple of things we'd really like. We'd really like to have a daily summary plot that is generated on the Pi each day, that similar to what the Grape 1 is doing right now. So like you wake up and you can see all of yesterday's data in a nice plot. And I don't think we have that at the moment. And the other thing I think we need is a nice set of tools that the community can use to do their own visualization and analysis. Some of these plotting tools are already available in the digital RF package if you happen to be an expert Python programmer who is very good with digital signal processing and Linux systems. If you have a lot of time available. So if you meet those 4 minimum requirements, then you're good to go. But I think a lot of people are lacking in at least one of those. So I reached out to Ryan Volz, who's the research scientist up at MIT Haystack that develops digital RF, and asked him if he had any documentation on how to use those plotting tools or tutorials. And he said, no, that's something that's lacking right now. But he did say that if we got someone to write some documentation or write some of these tools to make things easier, he would be happy to and field questions about digital RF and basically, you know, provide some level of support for that person. So what I propose is that we create another volunteer job description and job position where we're looking for a volunteer who could write that software to do the daily visualizations for the digital RF data, could write some software to provide tools to allow people to more easily do data visualization, and also write some documentation and tutorials to walk people through doing these things.
Yeah, the
So
challenge
that-
is figuring out how to use that, the plotting software. Because I
Right.
took a look at it and I could not get it to work. I'm sure
So-
it does work, but it's very difficult to use.
Very difficult. So I think if we can find a volunteer or a team of volunteers who can take responsibility for this, that would really be a big help to the project.
Nathaniel, are we talking about digital RF from MIT?
Yes.
Okay, it took me 2 days of very great frustration to get that program running on this Windows computer.
Yes. Yeah, that's why we need some people to, we need a team, or we need either a person or a couple people to pay attention to this and try to make that more accessible.
And how do we get the information off the Grape hard disk drive?
It's all stored in this digital RF format. You can use regular copy commands, but again, I think this is where we need people to spend time writing a tutorial document.
You can
Explaining
download
this.
it from the control center at UA.
Yeah, so you can download it. You will be able to download it from the control center at UA, but you're also keeping a local copy, and you should be able to know if you're running the machine, you should also know and be able to get to your own data. So
Yep,
we should
that
have
would be
both
very
things.
cool.
You should be able to FTP it from machine to machine on your local network.
Yeah,
But
I
digital
mean,
RF has a file structure. It's not just one file.
yeah, they are regular files, but like
But you have to
John
know which
said,
ones to grab.
right, you have to know which ones to grab. It
Yeah.
basically, the thing you want to do is grab a set of folders that match the dates that you're interested in.
Yeah, all the software assumes that the file structure is intact. So don't just copy a single file. The digital RF will just throw up its hands when it sees that, if it doesn't see a complete file structure.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, that's why we really need someone. I don't think anyone on this call is prepared to answer your question, Joe, in an easy manner. And I think that's why we really need to get some people to spend some time making this accessible.
One thing I had to do was go back and get earlier versions of Microsoft Visual C++, and also an earlier version of Python to make the digital RF run.
Oh my.
Yeah, you're talking about getting it to run under Windows, which is that's a pretty stiff challenge. I wouldn't even attempt it.
I got it, but it was frustrating. I have yet to get it running on the Linux Mint system.
It is conceivable that someone might be able to write a plotting software that is independent of digital RF, but can still do the basic visualizations. So, because that is conceivable. They could start with, probably I would start with digital RF, try to strip out all the things that weren't needed for plotting, and then you could probably make something that would port more easily to Windows or other operating systems.
Yeah. I don't know about whether or not I'll have time to write up a lot of documentation, but I want to be part of the group because I'm going to have to use a lot of digital RF data visualization anyway. So there's that.
Well, I have a program that will take an observation that we from the Grape and plot it as a waterfall. That's one thing that I've gotten working, and our plan has been to take that and when we get to it, each time we get an upload of a digital RF observation on the personal space weather station network to automatically generate that waterfall and store it in the system, and then there would be like a link to it in the observation, so you can go and take a look at the waterfall for that represents that observation. It's going to be a while before we get to that. We're still doing some prep work.
And I think that's, we're at the place where I think there's a lot of puzzle pieces that are available, and there are a lot of building blocks available, and different people have done parts of it. But most of those people that have done those things are very much time constrained, and like, Bill is doing an amazing job, but he's really focused on just getting the data up to the server, making sure the server is working. So that's where I think we need to get a new person who has time and expertise that can basically just be the person to pay attention to this part of it, this visualization part.
If we can identify somebody who is an expert programmer, and by that I mean probably better than me, I can bring them up to speed on what my existing code does, and they can take it from there.
Okay, the only thing I have to add at this point, other than I certainly agree with the need and the idea for kind of a position in the Ham-Sci Volunteer Corps makes an awful lot of sense. I did have a couple of responses when I put out a blurb on the Ham-Sci Reflector a few months ago, and I'll reach out to those people. And I think putting myself in their shoes, though, is that I don't think, unless they're intimately involved or understanding of the Grape project, they're coming from a base of understanding of basically at zero. And if I were one of those people, I wouldn't commit to do anything until I understood exactly what the whole project's involved. So I guess the idea was, I guess what I'm saying is I go back and try and contact those people. If they're interested, I'll work with them. I can obviously tell them a lot about the Grape. I can't get into the technical details, but Bill just offered to do that. I think we've got a path forward, but it's going to be hard to find the right people, but we have to try. And unless you try, you're not going to succeed. So let's try.
Well, we have 850 people, over 850 people that signed up to the Ham-Sci listserv for some reason. And
right.
So, and they all have different expertise. And, I'm really surprised, sometimes someone comes up out of the woodwork and, I've never heard of them before, and they clearly are very aware of, what's going on and how things work. And, so you just don't know.
So I guess what I'm thinking is I can reach out to the couple of people who've contacted me, but I'd also like to put together, and I'll do this, some kind of structured, basically what we've just talked about, put it into words and say, okay, here's where we're at, here's where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah, basically like a job advertisement and a requirements document, and see if anyone wants to do it.
Right.
Yeah, Gary, the last time you sent out a blurb on this, you were basically, as I recall, asking for people who had expertise on GNU radio. What we're talking about here has nothing to do with GNU radio.
Right. Okay. Okay.
What we need is a world-class expert Python programmer.
So that's the fundamental skill, is Python programming and graphical use of graphics tools. Is that
Python programming, data visualization with matplotlib, and digital signal processing.
Ooh, that's a tall order.
You never know.
Yeah.
Well, I can put something together as a draft, and we can review it before I put it out there in front of 800 people. So that's probably what we should do.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you can come up with a draft, and review it here, I imagine, George and I were talking about this, so I think George kind of knows what he wants from it and what the New England Grape group wants. So if you run it by them too, they'll. I think they will have some good input.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
want to be able to see what you can see with FL Digi.
Yeah,
No, I think we've got a great group here as usual, and a lot of things we do. We've got the very technically minded and stuff. You've got the Grape group, which are more the hands-on users, which is a huge part of what the community is all about. And I think as a combination of efforts, we'll get something good out of this.
There's a lot of interest in some kind of visualization for those of us out here in the boonies.
Yep.
The other thing I'll say too is that, John, in 2019, John kidded, and has kidded many times since, that the Grape 1 was just a proof of concept vehicle. But I can tell you every week there's somebody else that pops up and say, hey, Nathaniel will tell you, because he's getting some of the requests too. I'd like to build a Grape 1. How can I do that? Blah, blah, blah. So I think it's gonna live on for quite some time. And hopefully we can get it to where it doesn't require a lot of support. But right now we haven't gotten over that hurdle, but I'm sure we will.
Can I ask, of piecemeal code to do certain things, is it worth starting like kind of a centralized repository for everything just to get it together as a starting point, or would we just like a person to like start from fresh?
Actually, we've got an excellent starting point for the plotting program, because I have the plotting program I'm using now for Grape 1 that's written in Python that does exactly what you want.
Right.
that works with digital RF data.
John,
It's just
where
you
is
have
that?
to write the front end to talk to digital RF and get that in, but then it'll work.
It's going to be different, John, I think. But Bill does have that code. Engelke has the starting code that does this. And built into digital RF, there is also plotting routines in there as well.
Are we plotting the second by second Doppler shift, or are we talking the spectrum shift or the spectrum?
The spectrum.
Okay, that's different. But
Right.
the basic stuff is there for the other one.
Yes, but we're talking about the spectrum, the DRF spectrum data.
Okay.
So Bill Engelke does have this code. I've seen it. I've actually run it on my own computer. I know it exists. I know it works. I've seen the results that it produces. So Bill does have a start. I also have personally used the digital RF plotting routines myself for other projects. So I know that is there. I know that works. I just don't have the time to put it all together myself.
It's worth putting all of these codes in one place in a repository somewhere online.
I think the first thing to do is to write out what we need for the job description and the because I think when we talk to them, we'll get to know what they actually need. Before that, I know where some of these different things are, but different people are going to have to speak to them. I think there's other things that need to be done first.
Okay. Cool. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on the DRF visualization? Okay, I'll take silence as a good thing. Any open agenda or discussion points or announcements?
The question for Gary, I can chat with Gary after the meeting. We'll kind of offline for a second.
Sure.
Great.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to talk about or announce?
I'll just mention that I did the second AMSI presentation last week, and I think it went over pretty well. And likely to be, well, potentially there's 2 more that have asked, so.
These are local radio clubs?
Yes, local radio clubs. So, well, other than the Hamvention, but the other ones are local clubs.
And in that vein, I just assigned node number 69 last night.
Nice.
Hey.
We'll be in the triple digits soon, John.
Well, I'm saving the triple digits for Grape 2, but we'll see.
Let me ask a question, just to back up on DRF. When you say an observation, is that a minute's worth of data or a day's or what? These are all H5 files. How much of that is an observation?
We have defined an observation for purposes of this project to be exactly 24 hours worth of digital RF data.
Got it. Thank you.
And it begins at 0000 UTC.
Wow. 24 hours of DRF data equals an observation.
You will see observations that are shorter than that when somebody started in the middle of the day or
Yeah.
cut off their system in the middle of the day.
Hmm.
But you know, a single day is a nice. I mean, typically when you're saying what happened on June 4th, you look at 00 to 23:59 of that day, and you got you want
And
a
there
water
it is.
plot and whatever. So
Excellent. Thank you.
Gary, sorry, Gary. I
Yes.
forwarded you the link to the disk enclosure, but I got a response away from email. So I just make sure your vacation email forwarder isn't still active.
Yeah, I received it. Thanks. I'll
Okay.
fix that right now.
All right.
This is Ken Mellons, AI7LF. This week I listened to the excellent presentation by Bill Lyles at the Portland Radio Club. And I've gone ahead and ordered all the parts listed on your sheet. Once they come, maybe before the eclipse, I'm not sure. But would probably appreciate some help once I get all those components to bring it up. It sounds like the SD card load is a challenge. But if there's some that are already prepared, I'd love to have one.
You can download it.
All right. And then I haven't registered for a node ID yet, but I'll do that once I get my hardware built.
So which version are you building? Is it going to be the digital RF or is it going to be the standard Grape 1?
I think it's the Grape 1. I've ordered the PCBs and the DigiKey parts and the
the hardware
oscillator.
could be used for either software install. It's just there's two different installs. There's the one that Bill Engel is doing with digital RF, and there's the one that I created that's looking for the Doppler shift.
For running under Raspbian and
Right.
and displaying in FLDigi. And there's
Correct.
a beautiful 77-step document on how to set that up.
It's now 80 steps.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I haven't looked lately. And where can I find that?
It's on the website.
On the Hansai website?
Christina put it up under the Mendeley stuff or whatever that is. But I can ship you a copy of it if you want. It's a PDF.
Yeah.
So
Well,
is there a load that will be most useful for the community here?
That's up to Nathaniel. I don't know what you want, Nathaniel.
Say that one more time.
What do you prefer for the new systems? Do you want the Doppler shift or do you want digital RF?
I want the digital RF data.
Because that's going to require a hard drive and some other things as well. So it's a little more.
I mean, so I'll rephrase it. I would prefer the digital RF data. The digital RF data is going to be much more useful in general in the future, and it provides a wealth of additional physical information that just the single FLDigi frequency does not provide. However, if that is too much of a heavy lift at the moment, we'll be very happy to take the regular FLDigi data as well.
Yeah, so if he's doing the digital RF, my 80-step procedure does not apply. I mean, it's a completely left turn from what I'm doing. So I
would recommend, we do have this Raspberry Pi image that does the digital RF now. Yes, you do need a hard drive, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as big as the ones that we're sending out. I think it is doable.
I
Okay.
think digital RF is a better starting place for somebody who isn't a real guru at computer programming and everything. That's just my opinion, but I think it's a good starting place.
All right, so it's just an additional USB hard drive is needed?
With digital
From the bill of
RF, you
materials?
don't need with the digital RF, you don't need a hard drive.
No, the other way around.
Yeah, you do need a hard
Yeah,
drive.
yeah.
No, it's just a hard drive on the Pi, a USB
Yeah,
hard
it's
drive.
a USB hard drive. I think minimum. Well, actually, I'm not sure how much data, how big the data files Bill is saving.
The files are about 35 megabytes per day currently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've got some hard drives. I got a terabyte drive I can put on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
you
work.
just have to go through and reformat it into ext4 and then name it a specific way. I mean, there is instructions on how to do this, how to
Okay.
on this setup.
Okay.
We can get you.
All right. Well, I hope to have this going if I get all the parts and the time before the eclipse.
And there is an
Ken,
online forum if you run into trouble. So
All right. Then I'm in
Yeah,
the
the,
area.
we know, I guess we'd say we're a little behind on collating all the documentation into one spot, and I think that's gonna be the effort over the next week, 1 to 2 weeks. So my hope is, Ken, by the time, if you build the Grape One board yourself, by the time you get the board built, we'll have a little clearer path documentation wise for this digital DRF formatted data. That's the kind of the end goal.
And that will be at hamsci.org/grape1-drf-docs.
Right, which doesn't exist today, but it will by this time tomorrow.
Right.
All right.
And we're- So we appreciate the fact that you're willing to jump in and kind of go along for the ride, because it's a little bumpy at the moment, but we're working on smoothing it out, so.
Right.
Okay. Oh, another question. What sort of SNR to WWV kind of is needed?
That's
Signal and noise ratio?
Or say SNR, yeah. I mean, sometimes I hear WWV on my receiver, sometimes I don't.
correct.
That's okay.
That's part of the game.
Yep. No
right.
data is data.
Okay.
'Cause
And
we're
then
looking at-
antennas, I have a 40-20-15 dipole.
Yep.
Work great.
I'm using a G5RV, works fine.
All
I'm
right.
using an 80-meter dipole on my end.
It does not have to be resonant. It just has to be for receive only. So you're looking for
Yeah.
maximum signal, not maximum power. So that makes the
Yeah.
difference.
A long wire will do.
Yeah, I had a MFJ mag loop was still sitting out there, but I think it took a lightning hit. The preamp
Ooh.
doesn't work anymore.
Ouch.
Ouch.
The startup guide has a several page discussion on antennas and how they might be deployed.
Which is an excellent guide, I might add. George's document is very good. To see Bob's handwritten sketches and stuff in there really warmed my heart. I mean, that's ham radio when you see that kind of stuff like that.
That's what I
pretty
say.
sweet.
That's what I say. Looks very ham radio.
Yep.
That makes it authentic.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
It wasn't written by
Everybody's
by ChatGPT. We know that.
Oh, no.
There's a warm-blooded human behind it.
Several.
This is Bill, AA6BD. You're talking about antennas. I have a question. I'm going to put up an antenna for Grape One, and I have also in the vicinity a off-center fed dipole that I use for 40 to 10 meters.
Yeah.
am I gonna have any problems needing to shut down the Grape when I use my 100-watt rig next to it?
Bill, one thing I've done is gone to a place called Array Solutions and bought a 10 megahertz bandpass filter. So far, I've been able to run 700 watts with very close spacing between antennas, and I haven't burned up a Grape yet.
I've, 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 I've gotten away running 1500 watts, and not burned out my Grape yet, but I wouldn't guarantee anything, but
So it depends on how close the antennas are. And say if it's a dipole, are you broadside or end to end where the maximum radiation is going to be? So it's a little hard to say it without knowing all the facts for all the different stations here.
Right.
Yeah, they're gonna be at right angles.
Well, that's perfect. Okay, that
That
helps a
helps,
lot.
obviously.
And the new Grape has a little bit more robust input protection, so it should handle it, but users' experiences may vary.
I have two Grapes running. One of them is FLDigi, one of them is digital RF, and I leave them running all the time, even through the very intense thunderstorms we've had in the last couple of days.
Wow.
And they're just fine. I do not have protection on either boards. I did not put in that D1.
So the other option always is to watch the signal. If you're using FLDigi, is to watch the signal while you're not transmitting, and then transmit at 10 watts, 20 watts, 30, and if you don't see any change in the FLDigi waterfall, you're probably okay. Is that does that make sense, John?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Good test.
George, did you build the version 1.12 without the protection diodes?
No, it does have the protection diodes, and Stan built it, I believe. Stan.
Okay, that's fine, because I know the version 1.11 had that TVS that was impossible to solder, which is why I got rid of it.
So I just left it out.
Yeah.
I had to use a microscope to do that, to install that part.
Yeah.
Use a microscope to build the whole thing. I also noticed that on the digital RF version, during the thunderstorm, the yellow smear, which was the signal, kind of smeared all the way across the range.
Leave me alone.
Thinking was happening.
That sounds like input overload.
Yeah, but it lived. To plot another day.
Dealing with lightning is a significant challenge.
Yeah.
A lot of energy in that.
Also, I have all the systems on a uninterruptible power supply, but that's optional.
I have an offer for Ken if he's still on here. W7LUX Whiskey 7 Lima Uniform X-ray at ARRL.net sometimes works. I'm having a lot of trouble with my ISP, but anyway, if you have quick questions, I've been through both of the Grape 1 and the Eclipse version, and I may be able to offer some help.
All right, that's great. Would you mind? I'm not at a place I can write that down. Perhaps send me an email.
Got
with your
what's your email address?
Yes,
Yeah,
Ken.
Private chat.
Ken at Milnes, MILNES .TV, as in television.
Okay, that was Ken at MILES.TV.
Almost MILNES.
Okay, there's an N in there. MILNES. Will do.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
The newer version, I'm calling through all the manuals, and every time I reference it as Grape 1-DRF is the name of this system to differentiate it from the FLDigi version, which is also a Grape 1, but it's a different Grape 1. So if we refer to the current version as Grape 1-DRF, we can cut back on confusion.
Good point.
Okay,
That's all I got.
it's good for me. We are 12 minutes over, so if anyone
I'll
doesn't
share a couple of pictures if you,
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Send pictures straight to the minutes. So the
Oh.
minutes are editable until after the meeting, and then I'll set them to comment only, but I will stop sharing. And you can show the pictures on here as well if you'd like.
the Grape factory here.
Hey,
Wow.
that's Bob on the left and me, George, on the right. And in the background, Bill Blackwell and Peter Nordberg running through the first test of the first discovering all these issues.
That's what I call a production line.
Center assembly and then the, the final and then, yeah, Bill and Peter doing
These are great.
the testing. Better
Once
picture
you,
of,
once you
Shades of,
finish all of these. Once
Excuse
you
me?
Steve
finish
Jobs
all of
and-
these, if you like, it would be really nice if we could create a photo album and put a little story on Hamsci, you know, highlighting all of your work and include some of the photos.
all right, well, I can send you some.
That'd be great.
It makes me think of Steve Jobs and Wozniak
Yeah.
and company building
Yeah.
the first Apple ones.
Yeah.
Garage factory, yeah.
That was
Right.
Hewlett and Packard back in Palo Alto.
Them too, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
George was actually checking, you know, the PSWS network site for, as we were uploading.
Yeah, as we uploaded, somebody's little pin would turn red or turn green. And
And then check the observations, so,
Yeah.
anyway. Just what we were doing.
Any hot rod fan agrees that good things start in a garage.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
At least these guys don't have to deal with the smell of gasoline while they're working.
It does not smell of gasoline. It's a very clean garage that's a little dusty.
Well, you know, in terms of if you're working on a hot rod, usually you got the smell of gasoline in the air. At least in my experience.
Yeah.
And grease.
We've only got the smell of bits.
Yeah. They're all over the floor. You got to be careful not to slip on them.
And the bit bucket fell over.
Yeah.
I gotta go. 73. We'll be in touch.
yep.
See you, Bill.
Take care, Bill.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you.
7 3s.
7-3. Take care.